everyone for joining us, and thank you attendees. Welcome to the latest SaaS Ecosystem Alliance panel. My name is Christina Flashen. I'm the CEO of Pandium and the co-founder of the SaaS Ecosystem Alliance, which is putting on this great event. And today we've got an impressive group of experts together to share their wisdom about growing e-commerce ecosystems. This panel is scheduled to run until about 2:40, and we have some great questions already queued up, but we'll also leave some time at the end. So if anyone has questions, you can use the little Q&A function down at the bottom there. We'll get through as many as we can. Whatever we don't get through, we can take over to the SaaS Ecosystem Alliance Slack channel and continue the conversation there. So let's start with some intros. So if you can maybe share who you are, where you work, what you do, and then we'll jump into some questions. Lee, you want to go first?
Yep. Hey everyone, I'm Lee Barber. I'm head of partnerships for Constructor.io. It is a headless search and discovery platform that's powered by natural language processing, as well as machine learning and AI in a very innovative way. 26th out of 26 entrants into the search space. So a latecomer, but quite innovative. Definitely worth checking out.
Awesome. Claudia, you want to go?
Absolutely. Hi, everyone. My name is Claudia Regoza, and I lead channel and ecosystem partnerships for Rapyd. Rapyd is a global yet local payment service provider. So we really, focus on helping our clients and our partners expand globally. I have been at the company for about 6 months now, and we're excited to be here. Thank you for having us, and looking forward to learning more from the other panelists.
Thank you. Tyler, how about you?
Hi, everyone. I am Tyler Murdoch. I look after our platform partnerships at Rapyd Payments. For those that are familiar, we're a subscriptions payment provider, primarily for Shopify and BigCommerce, but works on other platforms here and there as well.
Excellent. And Ernesto.
So hi, Ernesto Tay, VP of Strategic Alliances over at Forder. For those of you not familiar with Forder, we're building out the platform of trust for commerce. The company's been around about 8 years. We've got about over 1 billion identities that we work with our merchants on enabling e-commerce, but we're also extending into other areas such as trusted identities as well. So just recently joined the organization, but previous to that was 2 years at Facebook and almost over 7 years at Okta. So happy to be here as well.
Well, thanks everybody for joining. And again, attendees, if you guys have questions, throw it in the Q&A, but let's go ahead and get started. So some of the big platforms are shifting towards consolidating their solutions to offer more of their own features versus partnering. Those that are partnering are offering more APIs, more plugin options, et cetera. Where do you guys see the industry moving? And anyone can just jump in.
I could jump in right here. So ecosystem is 100% the future. Accenture actually did a study with CEOs. 76% of them said that in 5 years, their business model will no longer be recognizable, and ecosystems will actually be the primary driver of that. Because if you think about for every dollar of spend on, let's say, something with Dell Technologies, there's currently about over $6 in different services just to make it work together. And as that becomes more and more complex, there'll be more and more need for additional services coming in to provide it. It's definitely the way things are going at an incredible rate. COVID definitely hurried that along, but yeah, I definitely see it as the future. They're actually having chief ecosystem officers now, because there's so many moving parts to keep track of.
Yeah, fully agree. I think you kind of have 3 paths to expansion: building, buying, partnering. Building, of course, is time intensive, it's costly, it can be really disruptive to your roadmap. Buying a company, of course, is costly as well, and you kind of have to integrate a whole other ecosystem into your company. Whereas when you partner, you kind of have the right balance, at least when you have the right partner, right? It's kind of the sweet spot of making sure that you are both expanding your functionality as well as offering your customers the best that's out there, right? No need to sort of reinvent the wheel if you already know that someone else, if Lee, right, is kind of doing what we're looking to do, and sort of fill that gap in our roadmap.
The other thing that we're all struggling with is hiring engineering talent. So if you're able, you got 10 engineers, do you put them on building something that is complementary through a partnership, or do your core product to help you have a differentiated offering to your customers? And I think the days are long gone of single stack across any type of enterprise or commerce or merchants. They want the best in breed. So they want the best commerce solution. They want the best shopping cart. They want the best inventory, and then we want the best fraud, et cetera. They don't want someone that does it all, because no one can do it as well as the individuals can. And it's ultimately our job to have the best integrations amongst ourselves so that the customers have that, those merchants have those choice. And the downside and the good side of SaaS is we're earning their business every day. The switching costs are no longer what they used to be, where it's going to take me 3-5 years to refactor this whole component. There's very few pieces left on the commerce side where that's the case.
I think there's one good point that Ernesto made there too that I think is important. It comes down to like the variety that an ecosystem can offer too. Like if you do have to switch and you're on a platform that is, you know, everything's in-house, that's a really difficult conversation, a very cost hurdle to go over as well. Whereas if you have an ecosystem as your platform approach, you have a variety there. And this is maybe a weird comparison to make, but I think about why like a Walmart or a Target has been successful for so long compared to like a more niche you know, clothing store, for example. Like there's a variety in there that you can go and kind of pick between if you're unhappy with one or the other, and that's what that ecosystem really offers.
And just to add on to that, I think it's also interesting to see so many like highly specialized tools, not just like, hey, you do payments, but like you do payments for this specific thing, or you do search for this specific thing. And you know, I think the idea of being all things to all people, which was maybe like a 15 to 20-year-old monolithic kind of concept, is starting to age out as we see so much more of these really highly specialized solutions. So moving on. So there's obviously a lot of different types of partnerships. Like I think we're talking about tech partnerships, but there's agencies, influencer, channel, all kinds of stuff. So how do you guys see the roles of different partner types currently shifting in the industry? Like, do you feel like merchants are more likely to purchase through marketplace and or tech partners and less likely through agencies, or kind of where do you see this going?
My take on this is I think it depends on what they're buying to an agency. For example, like if they're going to their agency to custom build something out, I think that is a trend that is really kind of dwindling over. I mean, there's still a need for that. There's some merchants are going to have really custom solutions that they're going to need to kind of have, you know, the solutions out for them and kind of put in place. But I think like we talked about in the last piece, like the markets, having a marketplace, having an ecosystem where you can go and like have a variety. You want to see, you know, what is the best in breed solution versus others, you know, what are up and comers. That is a lot more common of a trend that I think is not going to go anywhere. An agency has their recommendations. I think they have like their partners as well. And like, if I even look back at the agency space 5 years ago, like a lot of agencies didn't have their top tech stack they'd recommended. They would just kind of work with whoever came in. And that's something that's really popular now. They have to have their top partners as well. So that is definitely shifted for sure.
Yeah. And I think, you know, each partnership structure brings a unique value proposition and, you know, sort of client persona to the table. Speed to partnership is definitely something that's under discussed, but should be a really big decision point, right? So, you know, I can say that some of our most successful partners have started as a referral. You know, you have no IT, no lag time, but you know, you have kind of this speed to revenue and speed to profit, and you can offer those services immediately, and then, you know, kind of grow into a full-fledged integration. But I think that's, you know, a really good example of how you can kind of take one thing, turn it into something else, and kind of go through the different partnership types.
Yeah,
I definitely think, I would see, I think there's becoming less and less of like channel sales and resellers. I think, you know, co-sell motions are becoming much more common, much more, you know, deep partnerships between like, so for example, Constructors and Mock Alliance, which is all headless commerce, best in breed for like a one-stop shop for an online retailer going through digital transformation. So there might be, you know, a deal where we have 4 or 5 partners that are all involved in it, selling something else. And because it's like open source API, it's plug and play. So it's becoming much more like, I don't want to say convoluted, but much more sort of murky where the specific lines are, I think.
And along the same lines, it's also allows you to come in at the right stage of the project, where if we, in the traditional world where you go and develop a product and then go to market together, it could be about a year for it to get done. Whereas now it's the co-sell model of let's go validate that what we think is valuable is actually sellable. But the other component is allowing you to say, sequence the different pieces based on the customer's need. So if they're coming along and they're saying, hey, I'm really focused on my outreach and the ability for me to increase my brand, those pieces you can have the integrations that enable them to get that phase of the project done in a much shorter period of time and then sequence the other components later. Whereas before you had to decide everything up front. And by the time you got the deployment or we went live, it'd been maybe 6 months if it was a smaller merchant, to where there's another set of technologies that come along the way.
Absolutely.
Kind of follows software development trends, right? Going from like waterfall and understanding everything up front, hypothetically, to being more agile and working with newer technology. We touched on co-selling, and I'm curious for you guys what framework you use to decide which technology partnerships to invest the most in and to give the most attention to.
So one thing that, like when I started with Constructor, that I made sure to put first and foremost is strategy. So the company, like, what are your company's objectives right now? Is it growth? Is it increasing capabilities? Is it trying to enter a new market? And once you have a really clear idea of what your company's specific goals at this very moment are, then you work backwards from there and see, how much time do you want to spend in this? If you're going to go have a meeting with Infosys, it's going to take a little while before you start seeing the fruits of that. Whereas if you want like quick wins now, probably smaller agencies are going to be more agile and responsive. So I think it absolutely depends on, what your company's specific goals are at the time. And then again, work backwards from there.
Yeah, absolutely. We have a funny saying internally that rapid equals revenue. And, a lot of that comes from the fact that you look at the today, right? You look at kind of what the need-based partnerships are, where we can get a clear win for our clients based off of the feedback that we're hearing, what types of functionality they want or need, right? And then also, to Lee's point, the tomorrow, right? So what partnerships are going to expand the scope of what we're doing, whether it be geographical, vertically oriented, or what have you, but ultimately sort of partnering those two and making sure that we're servicing our client base as best as possible in the immediate term as well as in the long term.
There's also probably a core set of integrations that we all need to have because they're the go-tos, right? So making sure that you have those integrations and how can you, from a marketing perspective, get access and co-brand. And the other aspect that Claudia was mentioning was regional as well. I think we're all from the States, but there are significant technology partners that have large market share in a region that don't have a presence in the United States or much less in California. So sometimes being able to integrate or partner with them or in that region gives you a head start in that patch. Traditionally, in my background, it's HR vendors connecting to payrolls and systems like that. That's also an opportunity where you can, for a very little small investment, get a relatively large ROI and presence in that region on behalf and through that partner.
I think
I want to reinvent the wheel because there's a lot of good points said here, but I think one point that I have that kind of combines some of this together is to the point about kind of our scoping abilities and the verticalization. That's kind of been one of our main focuses the last little bit as we kind of reinvented our technology partner program. It's a lot around, here's what we're trying to go after, who are the right players to have involved to go after that space, and what can we do to add value to them as well. That's not a new concept at all for probably anybody that's even sitting on this call, but that's been our biggest focus as of late. It's just been, we're trying to go after some more niche markets. We want to try some new things. We're developing our product in areas we haven't done before. Who can help us get to that spot, and what can we do to add value to them as well? And to the regionalization point that Ernesto just made, that's been a huge conversation as well. We want to expand in different areas. We have so much North American market share. How can we get involved into these other areas that e-commerce is growing in different ways? Like North American e-commerce landscape compared to the EMEA e-commerce landscape is so drastically different. Like what can we learn from those partners to also help them get into our space as well? Those kind of things.
I think the piece about, really making sure that it's something that adds value. Because I think a lot of times in partnerships, and I know I've been guilty of this way too many times, where you find a partner and you work way too hard to craft a story together, and you end up just kind of spinning each other wheels and don't really get anywhere fast. Whereas if you need to be able to show a customer 1 + 1 = 3 when it comes to a really concise 1 or 2 sentence story for why a partnership is going to be beneficial to everyone involved. And again, I think it's such a common mistake to not really properly evaluate what the true value is. And people in partnerships, most of us love to talk, so you can spend a lot of time not actually getting anywhere.
Partnership folks are so friendly. To kind of riff on what you guys are talking about with going after different segments of partners, how do you guys think about staffing around that? I mean, I think geographically, it makes sense if you have partnership managers in different, parts of the world. But I would imagine, Lee, to your point, selling to not selling, but partnering with a massive enterprise versus, a small startup is different. How do you guys think about the staffing and team kind of makeup for that?
I wish I had staff.
Yeah, don't we all? Well, I can kind of share a little bit. So we are, geographically focused at the moment, but quite frankly, we are all a very global team. Part of it is the fact that, we're still a very rapidly growing team. Haha, rapid. But at the same time, right, just being able to intelligently speak to all of our clients' needs, knowing full well that our ultimate goal is globalization, and it's ensuring that they are getting the best rates no matter what. So being the head of partnerships in the Americas, I work very closely with my counterpart in EMEA, for example, to make sure that I'm up to speed on the latest in the UK, or what other regions, and the different legislation that's coming through around things like crypto. And just really being able to, even if it's not the most detailed conversation, at least be able to service and, to be dangerous enough to, kind of have that conversation and be able to steer things in the right direction.
I also think the model is changing, where making sure that the team carries a revenue number or a pipeline target is material. From my perspective, I've been fortunate to work at organizations where ultimately there's a number that makes it very easy to know whether or not you're winning or not. But also from a profile perspective, I believe the future leaders and the ones that are able to have significant impact come from a deep technical background. And it's usually, I've been fortunate to find and be able to recruit folks onto my team that used to be SCs who got tired of being just doing demos, but didn't want to go into sales. But they still want to have an outbound facing role, and having that technical background in a BD capacity or an alliances perspective allows them to go build something with other partners, but also still have that customer facing role. So that is one of those switches I've kind of made in the last 5 years, is looking for those architects, those pre-sales engineers that are extremely eloquent and well-spoken, but also want to go build something that might take more than 90 days to complete, which usually is the constraints you have on the sales side.
I love the sort of merging of a lot of those types of roles. Like you see SEs, more technical account managers, forward deployed engineers, professional services solutions folks, and then the partnerships folks all sort of coming together. And I think it's interesting because I believe the motivation is really about helping the prospect or the customer solve a problem, which is fun to see when you see engineers wanting to talk to customers. I think it's a nice switch. Cool. So continuing to talk about monetization, Shopify recently removed its rev share for the first 1 million an app partner mix. How do you believe organizations should think about monetizing their tech partners, and what do you think the future of this is?
I think to touch back on the adding value piece, that if there's real compelling value to be had, then the revenue will follow that. Then there'll be an actual compelling. I know, for us, we won't do anything that's not at least a 10x ROI, and in some cases that allows us a lot of freedom with partners to say hey, we're going to make sure that this is a profitable endeavor. And, in our case, search is a profit center, not a cost center. So it allows some of these, bigger SIs, if they're going in and trying to sell a suite of things, they can come in and say, hey, here's an item that will actually partially pay for the rest of this package. So yeah, I think if the value's there, then the money will follow.
Yeah, no, fully agree. And, I think when that value is there, it is very easy to make the decision of payouts, right? We'll pay you from the first dollar because we really do believe in this partnership. And we really believe in the value that it's bringing to, your client base, my client base, our joint client base that we can go after.
Everything that we've done in regards to the monetization aspect has been built around the bidirectional piece, I think, is what Claudia and Lee just said, is that like, if we're going to build something together, it has to be kind of working in reciprocal ways. And I think that is essentially what Shopify has done here, is they're trying to see kind of what rises to the top and kind of what's being really successful and kind of how can they capitalize on it. They really let their ecosystem, they gave their ecosystem some room to kind of get creative and play around, which I think was pretty genius at the time, just to kind of see kind of what new things are coming down the pipeline. But for us as an organization specifically, we really look at it, we don't have the same firepower that Shopify does. So our approach is more so around, how can we get a bidirectional, win here, whether it's A, building it, but then B, paying back, however we're rewarding our partners in regards to what they're bringing to the table.
Yeah, I'll agree 100% with what Tyler said. And because also those funds can be used for other things as well, right? If I'm a big, the give to get, like I'd love to give a partner 2 or 3 opportunities or engagements before one of our sellers asks for something in return, to kind of build that mind share. But also once these fees start changing, going from one side to the other, they can be substantial to the point where you can run campaigns of significance to promote the joint solution. So it helps fund those things. And also, especially in the markets that in the economy that we're going into, it helps protect some of that funding because it's contractually, it's there. It's not just, we have a budget cut, we have to get rid of these things. So there's been times in other rough patches of the economy where those funds actually enabled us to accelerate the partnership because they were, per the terms of the contract, could not be removed or used for other things. So how those funds and that rev share is used is also a key piece of it. If it makes sense and the ROI is there, yeah. But if it's just a fee to be listed and not get anything out of it, I think that's going to be harder to do longer term.
Got it. And with all of this, we're talking about best practices. What are some of the biggest challenges you guys see to growing a successful partner program in e-com?
Staying top of mind. Go ahead, Lee.
I'm about to say it's like a million different answers to this. I don't know. Top of head, ecosystems are extremely complex. There's a lot of moving parts and it's constantly changing. There's new entrants, every day. It seems like every week there's 50 new companies offering different, whether they're managing or, providing a solution for a problem that you don't even know you had yesterday. And it could be foreboding to both kind of learn about your own place, like, where's like a Venn diagram with like 200 circles to figure out where everything lines up and to keep it all straight. And also, again, not to hark back on what I was saying, but that's really the important thing about having a very clear strategy, because otherwise it's easy to get lost in the weeds and overwhelmed.
Yeah, I think what I was going to say really aligns well with that. Is it's when I say staying top of mind, it's so much about like being represented and not just having your name said for the sake of having it said. I think is important. And when you're like, if you're building something out and you're making a lot of noise, there's obviously some really good examples in the news as of late that have built a crazy brand and crumbled really fast at the same time, right? So I think when it comes to staying top of mind and being relevant, it's so much about like that strategy. What are you trying to solve? How are you trying to do it? What's your story to get there? That's probably the biggest challenge, but then keeping that above water and kind of keeping that name kind of floating and what everything else is coming. Like Lee just said, ecosystems with a lot of moving pieces, a lot of new vendors coming in every single day. And if you've done a good job at least having your name said a few times, how can you stay there? What can you keep doing to innovate and kind of make sure you're staying, ahead of the curve of things coming down the pipeline from other people? and learning from those mistakes that have been, come out as of late. Like, there's been some pretty common trends that, some of those companies have done that try to figure out how you can avoid. And it really comes down to, I think, adding value and being true to kind of what you're building. It seems really maybe cliche, but ecosystem is a lot to get a good representation. Ecosystem is a lot about kind of having a story and having a strategy, and then continuing to iterate on top of it to stay valuable and add, to solve more problems as they come up.
Yeah, absolutely. I think, getting started with those right partnerships, right? Making sure that you have your goals aligned. If someone's goal is just to be a brand on a page and not really do anything, and just kind of sit back and let, the brand do its thing, and your goal is to innovate and sell and market and, constantly look for new opportunities, and, that's just not really going to jive, right? Love what Lee said earlier about strategy. It's kind of like, okay, are you going to go for shooting fish in the ocean or in a barrel, right? You want to make sure that you're kind of going after that right pool of ecosystems to build out, and really making sure, I would say, that you're also aligning that with kind of the other cross-functional strategies within the company. None of us operate in a silo, right? We work very closely with our marketers, with our product teams, with our sales teams. And we want to ensure that all of that aligns with the partnerships that we're going after in order to make the company successful and ultimately our partners and our clients successful.
I think the other aspect that's changed because of the model of shifting to APIs and webhooks is looking at it in two ways. What are we building into? So who are we taking our resources and platforms and getting the product to integrate? And then also, who are we building for? Meaning, what are we doing on our side to create a platform that makes it easier for other products to integrate? The part of this space, the beauty of this space, there's one common denominator, and there's protocols, right? And there's some standards that you can work to. So that by building one thing, it gets you potentially 90% of having the product or the engine to have a different type of integration without having to start from the ground up. So that's how we started to look at it on our side, is how can we start, who do we need to build into? Because that's where our customers are and that's what they use. But also, how can we make it easier for other vendors to build into us as well, so that they have access to the benefits of Forder? That's a massive partnership, an internal ecosystem, and a massive partnership with product and engineering, right? Because the roadmap is very small and the list of things that sales wants is very large. So trying to be able to aggregate those and predict which are the investments worth making is definitely an internal partnership.
I like that point about making yourself easier to integrate into. I feel like that's something I don't get heard mentioned much, but so critical for finding the right partners and making sure that you have all of your ducks in a row for that partnership to be successful.
Yeah, it's definitely you want to be like a good actor and a good partner in that way. Once the engineers get in there after the partnership folks are done, you want to make sure that that's a good experience as well. We actually did a really good panel about developer experience and platform experience. I don't know, Kelly, if you or Liz can drop a link to it in the chat for folks. We had some great leaders in the space that talked a lot about this stuff. We do have one question, and it is, what data do you collect on partnerships and how do you collect it?
I'm going to say it's all still somewhat manual, but I think the default has been Salesforce, and nothing as sophisticated as a full PRM system on our side, though I've had the benefit of having those in the past. But it's really having visibility as to the partner's role in creating that opportunity of the integration as well. Maybe talking on the tech side, but the trend that I think we're all starting to see is it's no longer one partner doing it all. You might have a tech partner who refers you an opportunity that then you go work with a system integrator who then does not want to transact the paper, so you end up bringing up a reseller. And everyone's doing something different, and the margins are tiered in such a way that you're not overpaying or not making any money on the deal, but you realize there's benefit there in having more than one person in the room with you advocating for you. And some of the biggest deals that I've had the partners help us close, you're not in the room because of RFPs. So it's these other agencies coming in and advocating for you based on the trust that you've built with them. Because if there's one thing that COVID taught me was it's still about relationships, regardless how cool the tech is. And it was a lot easier before COVID and being able to travel and meet people and break bread. But now there's still a level of trust between individuals that represent the product to the customer or the prospect, and being able to live up to those commitments as well. That hasn't changed regardless of the tech.
And there's so many different avenues. It's like, exactly what you said, where you could have 4 or 5 different partners involved within one opportunity. And I imagine we all probably struggle a bit with trying to keep that data as tight and organized as possible. And especially to be able to give like an at-a-glance view for, let's say an account exec running the deal, so they can go in there and see exactly who everyone is, what everyone's doing, and to make that digestible. For me, a lot of it still is manual. Actually working on kind of redesigning how our sales force handles partnerships as well, to kind of account more for referred by, referred into, the different classifications, to have a little bit more clarity there. But it's a lot of data to keep up with, and especially to keep up with it in a way that makes it continuously actionable.
Fully agree.
One thing that has been mentioned that we try to keep track of a little bit too is what we call like saves, I would say. So if one of our partners is talking to an existing client and they've heard something that it might not be favorable to us, they're not necessarily, and if they're partnered with someone, a competitor of ours, for example, it's going to get a little bit more complicated and we might not hear. But we also try to build up some pretty good partnerships back to that bi-directional piece around, they might let us know if we might be losing one of our, top clients, things like that. Try to have a facet of it that isn't just a new biz. Try to have some part of the existing business as well.
So what you're saying is having like 40,000 shared Slack channels is not necessarily the best way to manage this. Every time I talk to a partner manager and I get a shot of their screenshot or a Zoom with their Slack, it's like lit up like a Christmas tree with like 500 Slack channels. I'm like, I don't know how you are not going crazy. Inbox zero never exists with Slack. Cool. We got one more question from the audience, then I think we have one more, and that's it. Is anyone making the reseller VAR model work for e-commerce at the SMB level?
So did you say S&P or SMB?
SMB. So resellers for small merchants.
So yeah, I can actually speak to a bit of this. My last company, so the company called the Mogu, and we had moved into a new product that we were selling that was a AI-driven promotional suite, essentially. And basically the idea was we used Latin America as kind of our proving ground for the reseller model. Found it was exceptionally difficult. A lot of it was, actually I meant to make this point earlier about how important the onboarding process is. And like you had mentioned earlier about the sorry, just had a total brain fart. No, but so the problem was technically training someone up about finding a partnership manager that actually has that technical background that can properly actually explain how everything works. Because what we found was essentially it was just the account executive that was running the deal and just kind of handholding the partner through that and then cutting them a check at the end of it. So it was very difficult, I think, for it to really have success. Because I mean the demand was there, and there's still plenty of agencies out there to work with you on a reseller basis. That's 99% of what we were going after. But it's super critical to make sure that they're properly enabled and onboarded. And even when they tell you they understand things, sometimes you just have to assume that they probably don't. Because otherwise, yeah, you just end up handling the whole process, and it would have been faster just to do it directly.
I also wonder if like some of these lower like ACV accounts, if it's worth it, to your point, to like do all of that enablement for the agency. I've seen obviously this work well with companies that are really well established, like the Shopifys of the world and some of the headless commerce, because the usage patterns are well defined. But I do wonder how successful it is with something that is a little more greenfield. I don't know if you guys have anything to add.
I think if it's transactional enough to where basically, and what we were going for was the idea where you onboard an agency and then they can go out, do their own business development, sell into their clients, and basically become just you do this 100 times over with 100 agencies, and then you have a machine. But our issue, and probably a lot of it had to do with the product itself, was just the level of complexity. We couldn't find something to make them self-sufficient. So definitely think it depends on the item and if it is transactional. If it's more of a kind of enterprise type sell, definitely agree. I don't think it would work out.
Any final thoughts, Tyler, Nesto, Claudia, on resellers or anything? We've got about 1 minute left.
I think Lee's on the reseller point. Lee's point of the complexity is the most important one. I've worked at a few different tech partners in the Shopify space specifically, and I've had more success with that when the tech is very straightforward. If I'm having an agency be the ones to go and pitch it for me, it has to be kind of not foolproof. Like, they're super intelligent people, but they have to be super confident in the questions. And if there's too many questions, they're gonna not really be that interested in doing that model, because they're not making the same margins off of what they'd be doing for their own services. Recharge, for example, is a fairly complicated solution. So we haven't even tried that approach. We've been more so co-selling alongside our agencies, just because it's very important for us to be a part of that conversation. I think the complexity is the most important piece there for sure.
Thing that we've discussed, we were fortunate. We've got some key partners like Astound and Proficient, SI as well, and just bringing them up to speed. But also on the customer success professional services, we've discovered they might not know or think of you in the initial project, but when they're going back in there, they are looking for new opportunities to add additional value or other products to go sell. So we've started focusing a lot more on the post-sale side of the house of these partners, because it's way easier to go back and sell in places you already are versus going after new logos, which we all care about, but is added value. It helps us. It also helps them remain as a strategic advisor to those merchants as well. So, and that is a model that plays really well regardless of the size of the merchant, which is a benefit for us who have small teams.
It's a really good point as well there about the stickiness and the importance of it.
Awesome. Well, that puts us at time. I appreciate all the attendees joining us today, and all the panelists. Thank you guys so much for taking time out of your very busy days. If you're not already a member, go to SaaSecosystemalliance.com. You can sign up for our Slack group there. We just hit 1,000 members. I think we're at like 1,005 or something now, all tech partnership folks across product, engineering, customer support, partnership folks, obviously. So great group. And I really hope all of you enjoy the rest of your day.